Hi, my name is Vlad Muraj. I'm a DevOps manager at Telstra Health's ADCC unit. And I'll be really happy to be part of this conference. It was I'll be glad that I got an invitation from Igor to be part of this conference. That's absolutely marvelous range of speakers. And what I particularly like about it, it's a lot of subjects being touched and a lot of aspects of DevOps being touched, cultural and technical and strategy-wise. So hopefully I'll be part of this conference next year and years to come, and really like to see the conference to grow, and it's probably gonna split up into different streams, which would probably, to me, sounds like a logical progression of this conference. And yeah, I'm absolutely mind-blowing caliber of presenters and mind-blowing overall presentation. I'm really happy this conference runs here in Melbourne.
Hi everyone, how are you? We had a coffee? Yes? Ready? All right, yay. So I'm going to be talking about Dockerisation and building a DevOps culture at RedBubble. So introduction, my name is John Murphy, as we've already established. So a bit of backstory about me. I grew up doing coding for fun, and then for reasons unknown to everyone, because I made poor life decisions as a teenager, went and studied network engineering, and then after that did servers and storage for a while, and I've sort of been bouncing back and forth between doing delivery engineering and engineering efficiency and site reliability engineering. And I'm sure this guy down the front's thinking, fantastic, John, you towering narcissist, but how is that relevant to me in building a great DevOps culture? Well, I'll get back to that. I promise I'll make it relevant. Whoa, okay. Something funny happened down here. The screen changed on me. I got rustled. All right, so who are RedBubble? RedBubble are a marketplace. So artists make artwork, and then we have a number of manufacturers, and when the artist uploads their artwork, they choose what products they want that to be on, and then customers come along and they purchase it, and it gets printed on something and then mailed to your doorstep. And that's more or less what RedBubble's about. This talk, though, specifically covers the engineering efficiency or delivery engineering, or maybe you call it the platform team, or I hope you don't call it the DevOps team, because if you're calling it the DevOps team, you've probably boarded a train heading in the wrong direction. The reason I say that is because DevOps is a culture, and if there's one thing that I sort of want to hammer home before I leave this stage, it's that when you talk about DevOps at your company, talk about it as a culture, not a team. It's not, there is not a group of people who do the DevOps. So that's really what I want you to leave with today. So because I'm lazy, I'm going to be pushing an easy answer, and this is my favorite slide. It conveys nothing, and I realize that well too late. But I'll come back to this. I'm going to be pushing an easy answer today. So what problems did we have at RedBubble? So the problems we had at RedBubble were that we had a little bit of an identity crisis. In the early days when I joined, the team was trying to do way too many things. They were trying to move the big monolithic application that powered a lot of what we do from one data center or one hosting provider to another hosting provider. They were trying to build tools for everyone. They were trying to establish, patterns, and they were trying to support teams, and they were doing none of it very well. And I remember there was a meeting that I sat down and I said, guys, we're an ops team. And everyone at the room was like, no, we're not. We're not an ops team. We don't run people's applications for them. I said, we pretty much do. We do the infrastructure, and we move them all between hosting providers, and we build all of the thing. We're pretty much an ops team. We should probably look at changing the way that we do things. And to make this worse, we're sort of operating in this weird functional silo. Like, we weren't doing a very good job of communicating with the other teams. We just weren't. Because we were so focused on the myriad of things that we were doing poorly, we weren't really listening to what was happening in with all the different development teams. And the decision-making of a lot of the tools and stuff that we built was really opaque. we didn't do a very good job of telling people why we made those decisions, or we didn't do a very good job of engaging with people and understanding their problems before we built something. So we ended up with a lot of tools that people just didn't really like. And this was something that the team really wasn't aware of because of, as I mentioned before, they were really siloed. Like they just weren't, the communication wasn't there. And this is one of my favorite quotes. Now this is one that came a bit later in the piece, but I want to start with it anyway. It was like, if you're going to build something, why, and he didn't say it out of spite or anything like that. It was said with a kind of genuine like, why are you doing this kind of thing? I don't understand why we need this when, we can just, you spin up Google Cloud and, create some services and life will be good. Why create this brand new platform? Which is what we set out to build. And that gave me it caught me off guard. It was a question I wasn't expecting. And it gave me a bit of a pause before I said, well, I mean, other than the fact most of our development teams are doing AWS, the other reason that we would probably, opt to not just put all of our, or like just go, we've got Google Container Engine, we'll just put everything in Google Container Engine, was that we wanted to, Google's great, and I'm sorry, Scott, I think I'm going to offend every vendor here today, except maybe Microsoft, so you're safe today, Microsoft. But ultimately, Google don't really care about RedBubble. They don't care about our business. They don't care about our development teams, the small problems that they have every single day. Whereas we do. Despite the fact that we were doing a really bad job of it at the time, we really cared about, helping teams deliver their applications faster. It's what we were why we were trying to do the things we were doing in the first place. And I remember rambling for a while while answering this question, and eventually I sort of came to that conclusion. It's because we care. That's no other reason. We can build something that'll make your life easier because we care. How do we do that? So we started to make a change. The first one was solving the identity crisis. So the leadership team got together and they sort of said, what we're going to do? We're going to stop trying to manage the big monolithic application for everyone. It's in a good enough state for the moment. We need to focus on helping teams deliver faster so that they can begin to focus on actually, decomposing that monolith into microservices, which is the direction that they'd been wanting to go for a long time but hadn't really been able to achieve. So we stopped doing a bunch of all the operational stuff. The second thing we did was we adopted more of a customer-centric mentality, which is to say we just went and talked to people. We'd just go and sit with people for a while and be like, hey, what's up? What are you guys doing? Some Docker today. That's cool. We like Docker. And then we went back and we're like, hey, guys, they're doing Docker. And then we just sort of did that a bunch of times to learn about what everyone's doing, and we got sort of excited about the things that we can do because we now had a common understanding of what people were trying to achieve, what they're having problems with. So we began to focus on solving these readily identifiable problems, the ones that were easy to identify. So we had quite a lot of services sitting on Docker Cloud. I'm sorry, John. Here's number 2 of the vendors I'm offending today. I'm sorry, John. We were on Docker Cloud, and a lot of people, we noticed, I don't know, something wasn't right for them. They kept saying they could smell smoke whenever they used it, and at some point we just sort of thought, well, maybe we'll look at something else, maybe something that vaguely smelt less like smoke. So we began to look at a bunch of different PASs, or CASs, or whatever ASs you decide you call where you put your containers. We were looking for something that would scale with RedBubble. We were looking for something that had a lot of reliability built in, and something that we felt would align with what we were trying to achieve using Docker containers. So we decided that Convex, which was really new at that time, we'd give that a go, because we mostly have Ruby developers, and that was made by the people at Heroku, so it had to be great. Then we looked at DCOS, Rancher, and Kubernetes. So first, Convex. Convex, we found that it was really simple to set up, but it wanted to do all its own stuff. Like it wanted to create its own VPC and live in its own isolated environment and not really tell you anything about what it was doing. So it literally was like Heroku that you pretty much deployed yourself. Like it was a platform that you could put somewhere and it was isolated and you know, you could deploy stuff to it. And I remember one of our engineers working on it said something along the lines of, I don't know if it's me, but this is making me feel really stupid. Because it was so opaque that he couldn't really understand what was going on. And he kept having problems where like the things the CLI told him and the things that the UI told him were completely different. And he didn't know if that was because like there was nothing he could see under the hood to like troubleshoot that. It was just this big black box. So then we looked at DCOS. DCOS it's a renovator's dream. If you're really into building stuff, you can build anything with DCOS. You just have to invest the time to actually do it. We wanted something that was a little bit more, I don't know, built. So we decided that DCOS was probably not going to be for us. Then we looked at Rancher. I have a special relationship with Rancher, so I asked if someone else could look at Rancher. However, upon someone else looking at Rancher, so, I mean, Rancher's great. It's really easy to set up. You can deploy it in like minutes. The tooling that it has, when I first used it, the CLI tooling wasn't great, but it's come a long way since then. It's got a bunch of plugin support, and it uses native Docker Compose as its DSL, except it uses an augmented version of Docker Compose as the DSL, so you sort of can't use that Docker Compose locally anymore, which sort of sucked. We also found, and this was the big issue, stability. Stability. Anytime, you know, we did our usual tests that we were trying with these various PaaS solutions to see if we could make it fall over, Rancher fell over. Like, there were a myriad of ways in which we could make Rancher not run. So we decided that Rancher was probably not going to be great for us either. And then we came to Kubernetes. Kubernetes was something I looked at before anyone else did, and at first I actually wrote it off. I thought, this is going to be too big and complex for us. Like, we're just not big enough for Kubernetes. After looking at the other solutions, we decided we might come back and have another look. We decided, well, maybe the upfront investment might be really high, but in the long run, it might be more stable. So we found with that, you know, it had a great list of features. The CLI tooling was very complete, had a great level of resiliency built into it. Like, we found it really hard to break. We did find ways to break it, but just from our initial looking at it, like, it was quite difficult. As long as you built, you know, did your standard setup for, you know, high availability and all that good stuff. Because I inevitably get this question whenever I begin talking about Docker PaaSes we tried, here's a list of things we didn't try. Deis Workflow, Crane, Panamax, Containership, Empire, Google Container Engine, ECS, Portainer, OpenShift, Docker Data Center, Docker Swarm, Atlantis, Docker, Suru, Shipyard, Mesos, Container, Triton, Flynn, Cloud 66, Data MC, Tectonic, Mantle, Nomad, Bluemix, Hyper, Sloppy, Arucus, Giant Swarm. Now, here's the thing. When I actually first made this slide, I actually forgot to write down the names of any of these things anywhere. And then when I went back to get the names of them, 5 more were on the list. There was roughly 3 weeks between when I put this on a slide and when I came back to check the names. So the reason why we haven't tried your favorite PaaS is that nobody got time for that. So we began looking at, so obviously, you know, from what I just said, we adopted Kubernetes. We found it, you know, Rancher was unstable. We found that DCOS was going to require us to do too much of an upfront of like building stuff ourselves. So we felt the most confident with it. We needed to solve some teething issues with Kubernetes. These teething issues include things like it uses a distributed data store. Distributed data stores are another one of those things that I sometimes love and sometimes hate because they, you know, as soon as they lose state, they lose all the state. So the first thing we did was we made sure that whenever we did an update, we made sure that it was rolling in a fashion that was not going to result in a state where we had too many new things up at once, and it wasn't going to have like an election failure and then decide that someone with no data was in fact the correct person and just destroy everything. The second thing we did was we built in backups. So what we actually have is taking a dump of that state into an S3 bucket, and then we do that every hour, and then every hour we actually spin up a Kubernetes cluster that tests that state is valid. So that prevents us from being in a state where we can't, you know, in the event of emergency, restore it reasonably painlessly. If you're going to use Kubernetes or basically anything that uses a distributed key value store that runs on leader elections like Zookeeper, I highly recommend that you test those backups rigorously. So the next thing we did was we began working with a team that was building a small Go-based application. Like the stakes were so low with this application, it just came along at the right time. And this allowed us to test out some of these new ideas that we had, some of the patterns that we'd been developing. And you know what? The developers loved it. Like they thought, sure, there's a bunch of new stuff I need to learn, and this is like much harder than I had to do previously. But all of the tooling I have to use is open source. If something breaks, Google will tell me what's broken, right? Or there'll be a Git issue for it, or something like that. They were able to begin solving problems themselves, which meant they were coming to us less with like really simple kind of known issues or small configuration problems. When they came to us, it was usually because they needed help on a conceptual level. Like it was, we're going to try something new and wacky, and we don't know how this works yet. Have you guys done it yet? No, but we'd love to find out, is usually the answer. And then we began, and so from there, we had pretty good success. And that led to this quote. So this was, again, kind of said in jest. This was one of the managers sort of in my area, and I was having a chat with him, and he just sort of said, like, people come and talk to us about stuff now, but not just like the stuff we're building, just stuff in general. And it was sort of like, why? It was this question. He's like, I don't know. I have no idea why this happened. I said, well, I mean, we stopped telling people what to do, and we started just listening to what they had to say, and we began building stuff that was relevant to them. We began developing patterns that were relevant to them, tools that were relevant to them. So really, the easy answer that I wanted to push earlier said, communication. I mean, we haven't heard that like 8 times today already, but really, like that's the heart of it, right? If you're going to build an engineering efficiency team, if you're going to build a delivery engineering team or whatever it is you want to call that team, the ability to communicate is the key component to making that work. It doesn't matter if you practice Agile or Kanban or Scrum or DevOps or Waterfall or Fragile. If you can't talk to one another, none of it is going to work. No, none of it. So that is all I have for my presentation. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, John. I really have one question that came up. Actually, a couple of. Are you comparing Rancher versus Kubernetes or Kettle versus Kubernetes?
Rancher.
What are your thoughts on Rancher plus Kubernetes, replacing native scheduler?
I mean, I looked at that and I just sort of thought, why would I put a PaaS on a PaaS? I've already got one really big complex thing to manage. Why do I need to stack them on top of each other? It felt like stacking turtles to me.
Have you guys evaluated ECS, provided you're running on AWS?
Yes. So when we were looking at ECS, we looked at Convex, which is basically like a wrapper on top of ECS. We considered ECS natively, but I mean, there were several people in the team who'd used ECS in the past and not particularly enjoyed the experience. So we thought maybe if we had something like Convex, which could abstract away some of the nastiness of ECS, that might work better for us. It didn't.
Good stuff. Okay, thank you very much.